Thanks, Sanjeev. Good afternoon, everyone. I think after lunch and after a long presentation, but it was interesting from Sri. I hope we can keep some attention on this one as well. So the presentation today, or the session which I'm going to do, is digitalization aiding the decision-making process. I think it was a very good, setting the stage for me to come in with Sri's presentation. I would like to also give a bit of a background on how we started as Cinga, where MAS was our first customer. And there were a lot of learning for us, and there were a lot of value when we went out and say, MAS is our customer. When we went into Bangladesh, when we went into India, or when we went into Vietnam, the first question asked, hey, where have you deployed? We say MAS, then no questions asked, right? So, I mean, that was something we are proud of to be associated with as well. Now again, before I start, when we first deployed at MAS, first few factories came in really fast. And then we went into Bangladesh. We realized once we implement in MAS, we can implement anywhere else in the world. That was the assumption we had because they were one of the top class manufacturing houses. And we realized that's not the case. Because some of the processes, the culture, discipline was so high, and the system tuned to that may not work in certain places like Bangladesh, right? There's no concept called single piece flow. There's no concept called min-max levels on WIP, right? So some factories want to use a system to control the theft. So while we are a company who works on empowering data-driven decisions, non-intrusively take data out of the process and let the management take decisions. But then now you get into situations where you try to use the digitalization to control the process, right? So these were the challenges we had initially. We're glad that we went into those different markets early in our product development. So that helped us to develop a product not only works in a 2 billion pound gorilla and also works in a smaller factory in Indonesia. So that's how we managed to build our product. Now everyone was talking about digital transformation. Everyone was talking about data-driven culture, smart factory. But I just want to now we are coming to the end of the session. Just want to do a reality check and get everyone on the same page. What is really digital transformation? It's actually about digital enterprises. They retain the customers, continuously creating value and digital assets to create the customer value. And that's where you need to focus. And to create this customer value, you need to create the operational agility. And if you are not doing your digital transformation with this purpose in mind, I think it's useless. I mean, Sri talked about it. What's the purpose of doing it? You need to understand that, right? So the purpose of doing digital transformation should be to create continuous customer value by creating digital assets and being more agile so that you can compete better, right? Now, Sri brought out a point or a word, lean plus, which you can take home. I would like to add on to that the concept of lean digital, lean plus digital, that's lean digital, right? So how you use digital technologies to be more leaner. Now, it's a bit of dilemma, like, okay, you want to first be lean and then bring the digital? Yes, it works. But sometimes it doesn't have to be like, you can use the digital technologies to understand where your bottlenecks are, to understand where your waste are. And then use that information to make your processes lean, make your organization more leaner. So there is no right way, right? So you can do things differently. With that backdrop in mind, I like to put up this picture. This is a clear blueprint for smart factories and digital transformation for manufacturing. Now, when we say smart factories and digital transformation, the focus primarily was on the shop floor. But actually, we are in industry, shop floor is critical, but shop floor is not the only thing that we need to digitally transform. So what we believe here is, it's about creating that agile operating model, which is decentralized, which is modular, which is flexible. And in order to create this agile operating model, you need to have a digital infrastructure which enables that, right? And that digital infrastructure will enable you to drive efficiencies in terms of capabilities like building smart factories. And also the same digital infrastructure can be used to add value for your products. Product innovation, smart products, smart services, and the things in between, like supply chain. Now, all this needs to be supported with the governance and the process and the people and the leadership. And the technology piece, the digital infrastructure, which enables this entire journey, needs to be supported by key technologies like cloud, mobility, talks about IoT, M2M, 3D printing and things like that. Now we as a company in Cinga, we focus on helping you to create this digital infrastructure in the middle using these enabling technologies. But being a startup, we can't kind of boil the ocean, so we decided we stay on the line of smart factory, and in that smart factory helping the companies to do decentralized production control and data-driven operational excellence. Now I want to talk about these two. Decentralized production control. Now we talked about these big factories getting orders from big brands and how to manage the operations. Generally, we thought our product was fit in more for these large companies, because you have 2-3 lines, you really don't need a system to manage. That could be the thinking, because you can manage it manually. But when you become big and geographically spread it across, then you really need systems to manage, get that visibility. Now in places like Bangladesh, all the owners are in Dhaka, and you can't take 5-hour journey to industrial areas. They really don't like it, right? So you can really have that visibility on your fingertips. We thought this will work well in big factories as well. Now, Sri talked about how the consumer ecosystem are changing, where influencers in Instagram decides which fashion going to come next. And those fashions are not coming from the Nikes of the world or Victoria's Secret or Under Armour. It may be these fast fashion brands which will be only there for 1 or 2 years, and then another set of brands are coming up. Now there are new sets of players are emerging, like Amazon. Obviously everyone knows. They still play with the big players. Now there are other set of players like Zilingo. They're trying to build Uber of manufacturing, where enabling these 1-line, 2-line, 3-line factories and create a massive factory which they can manage digitally. And our kind of technology fit in really well. Now these are the kind of things which is happening, which is enabled by this digital infrastructure, cloud and mobility, and still manage it like one single factory with the power of data. Think about that. Now, again, coming down to the challenges on the production flow, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but really, as production people, we need to understand whether the quality of the output is achieving the customer value. Is it delivered on time? Can we complete the shipment on time? The theory of constraints, where the weakest link is how strong you are, as Sri mentioned, right? And the work in progress in the shop floor. You can improve the process, you can improve all the lean capabilities, but still there are some factories, especially in Bangladesh, They don't care about the waste or the defects, because the defected garment will be thrown into the market. They won't go through a rework process, because it can be costly as 3 times of the process, right? So there are different kind of challenges you need to adapt. That's why I said, like, when we first designed our product, it was really focused on quality and efficiency. And then when we went into Bangladesh market, we realized the problem is something else, WIP. We have to sort it, and the product needs to support that, right? So these were the kind of problems we managed to solve for our customers. Now, again, the primary focus of our approach was to bring the real-time visibility and the actionable insights. Now, visualization was a key part of this journey, which we talked about, and bringing that data to be actionable insights. Now, you all know, like, what happened in Easter in Sri Lanka. We had all the information, didn't act on it, and 300 people lost their life, right? So similarly, what we can do is basically bring this data to visually for you to make decisions, bring this data to the point of locations, or the locations where you can make decisions, and there's a value for this data. Now, I would like to also highlight the fact that many a time when we goes in to customers, when we try to explain this value of data and the importance of data on the decision making process, the first question we get is, hey, I have this ERP, I have all this data. I have the ERP and I have all this data. I have set of analytics tools. I use Power BI, or I use Tableau, and I have bright set of data analysts. I have all this. So that's the problem, because this data is not democratized. It's with few smart set of people. So that's what we are here to solve, right? So any organization, when we go in, we realize they have a ERP, they have a PLM, they have a planning tool, right? But we are in production business, we are in manufacturing business. But what do you run? Your production flow is, you try to write an extension to your existing ERP, which is not going to work. It's like, you're on a race track and you're trying to take a big lorry to go through that race track, right? So that's not going to work. So that's where Cinga comes in, where we help digitalization of the shop floor, and we are very focused on that. I think that's the first thing that you should do as a manufacturing business. You don't really have to have a planning tool or a PLM or a ERP. You can start with just the real-time data, understand the state of the business, bring in a culture of data-driven decisions, bring in the data into the people who really runs the operation, bring in the data to make these timely decisions on real-time basis. I mean, that's what the shop floor digitalization would bring into organization. Now, what is a MES and what is a smart MES? MES is a manufacturing execution system, right? So it really sits in between the ERP and the shop floor, really helping you to manage the manufacturing execution and continuously improve that. Now, what is a smart MES? Smart MES is bringing all these smart technologies into the production flow. It should be built on smart technologies like cloud, so that every time you need to deploy in a factory, you don't have to go and set up IT infrastructure. Manufacturers doesn't have to worry about having IT people on the factories, right? It should be centrally managed on the cloud. And it should use all these automatic data collection tools. It could be sensors, it could be cameras, it could be RFIDs, it could be tabs. And it should have all the intelligence data engines to give you the real-time analytics. Now, Sanjeev asked the question about whether data being automatically collected, and Sri talked about the integrity of data. Now, again, we have to start somewhere, right? So if you look at most of the factories we operate, the machines or the equipment you are using are not smart. And I don't believe that it's going to be smart for next 5 years or maybe 10 years. You still have to recover your investments, right? So, but do we have to pause our journey until all the equipment gets smart and connected? The answer is no. World is going to be hybrid. So we have to start somewhere. Now our approach here is build that digital infrastructure with smart devices like mobile devices like tabs, and these commonly available low cost devices have sensors built into it. There's a camera built into the tab, right? There are RFID sensors built into the tab. So there are QR code readers built into the can be built with apps into your tab, right? So you can make these devices smarter. But the importance is building that digital infrastructure where you can collect information in real time. Whether data is authentic or whether data is right, you can figure it out at the data level with the math. If someone is trying to fool the system with bogus data, you figure it out with analytics and the intelligence at the back. So if you have smart machines, great, we can collect the information from there. But if you don't have smart machine, do you have to pause your journey until you have smart machine? Absolutely not. You can start with what you have, right? Because what we believe, when we goes into factories, they also look at the cost benefit. Most of the time, 90% of the cost is on the connecting these devices, whether they are smart devices or dumb devices. But if you look at, if you have 1,000 machines and these 1,000 machines are assigned in let's say 50 groups, 20 machines in a station, you don't really have to go and collect data from each machine. You can just measure the input and the output, and you still get the 90% of the data which you need to run the factory effectively from those. And if you try to collect all the information which you don't have right now, you end up with a project 10 times higher cost, which won't get approved by the management. So hence we decided, starting our journey, advocate our customers to start their journey with places where most important. Inline QC. That's one of the most important point. It could be if they're working on a pull, then packing station, right? So where you can track the orders. If they're working on a more quality base products, then inline QC, right? If you're worried about WIP, then you start with cutting out, line in to line out, inline to finishing to packing, right? So when you start measuring the input and output with the math, you can figure out what's happening in between. That's good enough. And that can generate 90% of the value. That can realize 90% of the data which you're really looking for. And for the rest of that 10% of data, you have to pay 90% of the price of the system or the hardware or the software. So it's very important to design it, because we call it like, we are now on the ground, right? So, and we are using pen and paper, manual operation. Now tomorrow you want to go to the moon, it's not going to happen, right? So let's take a step-by-step approach where we maximize investment, where we start creating value as we go on. So smart MES is building this infrastructure with all the smart technologies as a foundation. Now, I will take few use cases. Sri talked about culture of data, and the other thing is culture of problem solving. I mean, problem solving goes with the culture of lean manufacturing. You're answering the why, 5 whys. So with our solutions, what we have built is being able to get to drill down to at least 3 whys, and you have the availability of data for you to make decisions. Now what happens generally, you have all this data in any factory, you collect it manually, goes into the Excel sheet, goes into the ERP or file folder, and that data is dead. No one going to look at it for solve problems. Is it available for the team leaders or group leaders or the supervisors or the managers at a click of a button? No. So they stop solving problems because getting access to data is so cumbersome. So they stop solving problems because it's not easily accessible. So what we have done is bringing down these capabilities of insights with visual management onto the shop floor, so the workers can see themselves, teams, and the important people would see themselves on their tabs, and everyone else can see the data in their mobile phones. And they can drill down from there. That's about democratizing the data. And these are not rocket sciences, right? So, but when you really have to implement on the ground with the kind of user friendliness, the simplicity, and the consistency on the data. Now, we might think like, okay, it's something, very straightforward. You have a data collection device, be it a tab, be it a camera. It goes to the cloud and you display it on dashboards and on mobile phones. Now that's true in a consumer IoT kind of environment, but the thing which you need to figure out, there is a process in any factory and this data needs to map to that process. There is a horizontal layer and stitching that data consistently into that and having it real time synced with all the challenges you have in the network within the factory and with all the challenges you have to network with 3G, 4G connections which are not so stable and still coming back to your mobile with consistency. It's really a challenge and it took a few years for us to figure it out and we're still figuring out in certain situations. It's not easy. And biggest advantage I would see for us was like we were ahead in the game and all our developers and the technical staff, we were writing this code from the factories, not from software development houses. So that's where we managed to bring in some of those intuitive features into our solution. Now, what you see is how we are solving reworks on the ground. Now, in the morning, Gunish talked about that, having end up in 1,000 or 100 pieces at the end of the day, figuring out in the next day morning meeting versus if you can figure it out on the second hour or the first hour that there are repeated defects happening, you go and fix it, right? And that's huge saving. And even the simple things. Now, Sri talked about trying to avoid morning meetings because you are doing it forward thinking at the end of the day. With our systems, we really can do it. Now, what we have also noticed, even you have the morning meeting, you are debating about your data and trying to find the right data to make decisions rather than making the decisions. Now, even if you have the morning meeting, now you just walks in your iPad or with the data on the mobile. No one going to question about the authenticity of the data because everyone has a single source of truth and it's about making decisions. Right? So, and that morning meeting can be about talking about making those strategic changes and decisions. Not about pointing fingers at, whether this is correct, this is a judgment, how do you say that and things like that, right? Now, again, this is about operationalizing, like visualizing, right? Unearthing the insights. Now, once you unearth the insights, now Sri talked about drilling down and going down further few levels. Like let's say here you see hourly defect counts. Defects are high because is it in a particular station or is it creating related to a particular operation? And who is doing that operation? You can straight away roaming QC or someone can straight away go into that person and talk to them and help solve that problems. And as we collect this data more and more, we can also identify design issues. Probably it's not only an issue on the worker or the machine or the material. It could be a design issue on the silhouette. You can go and talk to the buyer and say, hey, in the next style which is similar, can we avoid this particular design? Because now you have all the data to show that this particular design, irrespective of the factory, irrespective of the line, irrespective of the shift, it gives you the same type of issues. Now then again the production monitoring, right? So when we started this off, one of the things we realized in a cricket match, right? So you're on a chase and you want to pace the chase, right? It's not like you just like Sehwag, you just go and hit, finish it in 15 overs, but Dhoni takes it till the end, right? And then somehow get it through. So when we started this off, bringing that scoreboard mentality into the factories, we started realizing, like, when the workers they start looking at the target and the defects every time they do operation, they do a little look at the board, because it's also tied to their incentives. Now every time you bring in something into tracking people or tracking processes, people get really worried about it. There's resistance. But what we did initially was we integrated the incentives into the real-time dashboards. So the workers would see how much they're taking home, right? It related to the efficiency, it related to the defects, it's also related to the production, right? So with that, we managed to bring the efficiencies up by quite a margin in some of the places where we have deployed this. So bringing that feeling that this system is good for them, they can take money home. Now, when we work with good companies, ethical companies, they really like these ideas. But when we work with some, they say, hey, I don't want to show that incentive on real time, because they're not sure whether they're going to pay the same thing, right? So it depends on. Some people say that's good, but some people would say sometimes there may be adjustments, but people probably will fight with us for that. So let's not show it. Fine. But the system is capable of bringing that kind of people aspects, human aspects into the system. Yep.
In this case, was the incentive scheme already operational, which you displayed, or when the transparency was brought in?
Yeah.
The incentive was also brought in.
There was incentive already. That was group-based incentive. But what we could do is use the incentive numbers to push them to the next ladder. Like it says, like at the current pace, you're doing 55 pieces an hour, your incentive is 100 rupees. But, if you put 5 pieces more, you're going to move to 150 ladder. So they know that they're not too far away. They push.
So you're showing the next milestone.
Yeah, we show the next milestone. Where are you now? And with how many pieces were you going to hit the target, right? So the next ladder. And that really kicked in well for some of those factories. And again, visibility, operational visibility, it's like the command control center where factory managers and everyone would see these centrally, all those key KPIs, WIP. And with that, we could also create a kind of competition between the teams. Okay, this team is having better WIP or right WIP. They're making incentives, and everyone sees that, right? So that can also bring out a culture where people who have free time go and help the others, right? So that it creates a team culture and also a little bit of competition between teams so that they try to outperform each other. Now again, this is related to operational intelligence, where you can bring in these drill down capabilities to understand where the problems are, problem solving. Now, this is something which I want to highlight. When we first started off with some of our factories, they were running mostly on the method of push. They run for the plan. And there were some factories we realized they run for a pull, where they run based on the PO. So what we managed to do for them is, and some of these factories were fairly large, and some of these channels we operate, some of them are like buying houses. They have like 20-30 factories under them. They want to have a bird's eye view on their order status. That could be for someone owning 40 factories or 4 factories or 1 factory. They want to understand order fulfillment state. How are they doing on their order? Right? So we managed to give that, and that has been really a hit in the recent past when we launched this feature. But everyone wanted to understand what we are doing with that. Like for example, order tracking. See, order tracking generally happens at ERP, right? So because the PO, and then once you pack that data, go there and get updated, maybe hourly basis, maybe on daily basis, right? But what we have brought in was really bring that into the real time, into the shop floor. Where now imagine you have 1,000 pieces, and out of that 20 pieces out of red small is delaying the entire order, and that could result in a big penalty of air freight. So everyone knows that either everyone has to focus on that and get it done, or someone needs to talk to the buyer and sort it out. The rest of the 980 can go. And that can only be done, only you have the real-time visibility, right? And not the next day when you run the reports on the ERP. This will be alerted, this will be escalated, so people will take action. Now, another thing what we have done quite well was bringing all this visualization into the mobile phones, because nowadays, every one of you have ERPs, and how many of you log in and run a report? And maybe some, but most of us don't. And I don't look at reports either. But if someone calls me on mobile phone, WhatsApp, or the apps, right? So basically what we have done is bringing all the insights as much as possible into the mobile. And there's a challenge, because there's a challenge on real estate. So we try to put just enough information, just enough KPIs on the mobile phone, so that you can run the factory on the go. Now this application is called N-Factory on the go, where you can manage the factory on the go. So how cool it would be, like on a Friday night, you still have your drink with your friends, and you still trying to manage your order fulfillment on your mobile. Obviously your team has to work from the factory, but you as the owner or the GM of the factory, you are democratized, and you have the freedom to move, because everything is on your fingertips. I think again, this is not only about technology, it's a culture change. That's why I talked about lean digital. So it's a digital culture change. So what we do, we can go in and come out of a factory if we have the right mindset to implement, and they have the right ownership, right stakeholders from the factory as well as from our side. We can come in and we can go out in a factory after implementing in a week. But then there is a process of change management. Getting these people aligned to a digital culture, and Sri talked about having that organization, because you can't have the digital system and you're still trying to make the decisions in the same way. Culture change, where I used to using a lot of pen and paper, now you start doing things on the mobile, and your bosses start asking questions from the mobile, right? So it's a different culture change. So we do work with these project champions, and we do train the trainer, and we also have a program called in-factory certification. Now imagine we all as professionals, we have gone through technical trainings, lean training, site visits, conferences, right? These workers, the team members on the floor, how many trainings have they gone? How many have they even passed O levels or advanced level? Maybe some in these countries. So this is a big thing for them, right? So they get certified after going through this transformation. In fact, is certified. They have a certification. So that kind of create self-confidence among them, and they feel that they're part of decision-making, data-driven culture of that organization, right? So that helps them to be part of that and start using it sustainably. Now, this is some of those changes, some of those pictures you see, digital culture change, how it happened. On the left side, it's in Bangladesh, one of the factories. On the right side, it's in Vietnam, right? So the first impression matters. And we have had some of the buyers in Bangladesh or the factories, they come to us and say, hey, I have 10 factories, let's implement in all the 10 factories, and they negotiate down the price. We also think, wow, we're going to get 10 factories, 200 lines. Guess what? They implement that only in one factory, and that one factory is the factory their buyers visit when they have a certification or something to be done. So at least they want the system to get the first impression going, because now we are embarking on a journey of smart factories and everything is smart. And we still have customers like they have the system, and we can see in the back end they operate only on certain days of the month. We know that that's a buyer's visit, right? So I'm saying like it's not right, but just basically that's another angle where you want to impress buyers, or really you want to improve processes and adapt the digital culture change, and you will benefit out of it, right? So that's a long-term benefit. And after a while, it's not a option. You have to do it. I think with that, I would like to also share some of the details where we have realized the benefits before and after. Some of those factories which we have deployed, some of the good factories, which they had really, really good process stability. Even they are operating at a really high, really high efficiency levels. They could still bring their efficiencies by up to about 10% using the system. Now again, when I say this, I get challenged every time. Now, I have a simple answer where not just deploying the technology, you can't get the efficiencies up. Now, I'm putting on a lot of weight, so I'm using iWatch. I try to count my steps and, calories and things like that. But you know what? I don't do my 10,000 steps. I didn't do that today. And I didn't, I like Indian curries and roti, so I ate a lot. So since I bought my iWatch and I measure everything, I'm not going to reduce weight, right? So I'm going to put on weight, right? So it's similarly like what we can bring in is the tools, but the people and the process and the leadership needs to use that tool to drive that efficiencies. But what we can bring in that tool, really, if you really use it, you can get to the next level. But I also have customers complaining, hey, I bought the system, the thing didn't work. But when I go and look back and I ask my team to take a look at the data, and I really know that they have really not used it, right? So, and the other thing which we want to also highlight, the social impact, because this had helped people take more incentives home. because now they are more efficient. They're producing less defects. So less defects again improve the output. So they are getting paid more. So this gives us immense satisfaction that we can help these poor people in our countries to take home more. We have done some calculations based on some of the lowest cost of manufacturing in places like even in Bangladesh. ROIs could be in few months, and I know like in apparel industry, if you're looking at anything less than 18 months, 12 months, it's a project that you should do. And if you really see these kind of ROIs, after 3 months, if you don't do it, you are to be on the losing side. One thing is like looking at the numbers and doing it. Yes, numbers needs to back it up. But I hear some of the nice arguments around this. See, you also need to take your standards up to next level, right? So it's how you carry yourself, also take it to the next level, and where you attract different set of buyers which can give you higher profitabilities. You started playing in a different league. So it's not only about rupees and cents. It's also about the will of the leadership to embark on this journey to take them to a next level. I think again it's not an option. Digitization train is leaving the station. It's a train, and are you ready to get on board, or you're going to miss the train? That's the thought that I would like to leave you with. And the one word, lean digital. I mean, take your lean journey and do it with digital and smart. With that, I would like to thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to come and present here. And thank you very much again for the business extended towards Cinga. And we really enjoyed that last few months working with OGTC and its members, and it was a real pleasure, and we learned a lot. And I hope we can continue this journey.
Thank you, Imal. Thank you for making a very good presentation and bringing out how transformation can be brought out in large number of these organizations. So we still have about 5 minutes, so we can ask for any questions. But I wanted to ask a question. What is a typical size of the organization that you try to do your process interventions? Is there some companies which you think are too small, too large? Of course, I'm not sure. But what is a typical average size turnover of the company that you do an intervention in?
I think what we have realized is like in the mid-size, it's easier to do, not too large, not too small.
Mid-size means?
Mid-size means like at least, you have more than 5 to 10 lines or 10 lines or more, because they can really see the value with the scale, right? And we have seen also like huge, like probably about 100 lines kind of situations in Bangladesh, which not only cut and sew, they have washing and things like that. It really get complicated, and it takes really long time, and sometimes people can get lost their interest of doing the digital transformation. So it really I would say, even if you have something big, you can just start with a small department or small slice of the organization, and then you can go for it. But the thing is, it's important. What we have also realized is when we go in, that some people ask us, hey, I have 20 lines, can you do it in 2 lines? We generally say no, because it's doomed for failure, because you're running operation. The guy who runs the operation doesn't have time to have that 2 lines working, because his day-to-day job is making sure orders are running on time. So we say, okay, start with 20 lines, but start with one department, maybe sewing, or maybe finishing or packing. So in that way you can contain the changes, and then once you stabilize, you can go into the other areas.
There is a question here.
Does this system have any kind of communication channel or departments or the multiplication?
Yes, yes. So one thing is the visualization, the one-way communication. The other thing is like the team members can also, who are authorized to input into the, apart from the collecting of data, can override certain things and can input certain messages into the system. You can also use this digital infrastructure once you build this dashboards and things like that, and the mobile apps. You can use that to engage with the 1,000 or 10,000 workers you have at scale. Is that the question? Did I answer your question? Or?
Sort of, I mean, I'm referring to if there is any chat function whereby you can ask for more explanation or more details of some data or something like that, or you can ask for the reasons or push.
Yeah. So there are alerts and escalations on one way, and on the other hand, they were asking, like there were some of the requests come to us where they want the chat functions on the apps which we deploy, but we have taken some conscious decisions not to do it for certain reasons. But it's capable. The infrastructure is capable. Even you can throw in some advertisements or the messages to the people on the mass scale. But what we have done so far, implemented, we have stayed away from implementing the chat function.
We have a question.
For
Hi, Imal. Hello. Imal?
Yes.
Hi. My question is not for the technology thing. My question, whenever any technology guy, any technology company come to the factory to implement some new thing, end of the day they say give incentive to the tailor to success this new technology. Why we have to give incentive to make it success?
Yeah. Actually, that's a good question. I mean, I also don't agree with that. It's just that it should be a byproduct where they earn more, rather than it should not be you throwing in money to get it done, right?
Actually, money is the main factor, I think, and maybe Bheda sir can answer my question. It means our workforce can produce more, can do lot more things, what they are doing currently. But why they are not doing it? What the thing
I would like to answer that. Change management is a very difficult process. Anytime you're trying to implement a change, there is resistance. So these financial incentives which you're talking of, these are just to smoothen the process. It's not that people are just working for money and without money they won't do it. It could be non-fiscal incentives also. So anytime you have to bring about a change, look at how to create it as a win-win. Otherwise, if the person feels that for me there's no win, only win is for the owner of the factory, there is a resistance. So it could be various other factors, non-fiscal also.
Is it possible to customize the dashboards for different teams?
Different teams. The answer to your question is technologically possible. It's possible, but we have not done customization within the same factory for different teams. For example, you have sewing, they're looking at the same level of, but let's say it's a cutting department or finishing, they can have different dashboards.
I'm thinking of involving the merchants. So there's a lot happening in production, and
Yeah.
usually the merchandising team is somewhat disconnected from the manufacturing part.
Sure.
So they end up with their weekly meetings to
Yeah,
figure out what's
yeah.
going on. The day before the shipment, if it's running late,
Yeah.
they'll go 10 times to the production manager. That's a waste of time. So from a customer-specific standpoint, if they want to see
Sure.
what's going on,
Sure, we can. Actually, we have done it. So one of the use case was, like generally the merchandising team sits in city and the factories are not in the city, right? So one of the use cases for using our factory in one of the factories in Sri Lanka was where merchandising guys wanted to understand what's going on in the factory. So we can have it on their mobile phones, or we can have it if they are seated on one particular location, then they can have the separate set of data coming into them. We have done that and can be done for sure.
One question is
Yeah. That was responding to his point on the incentives. So there are two things. If you look at the international standards and what is recommended,
Identify yourself so that.
that's me. My name is Dr. Rajesh Bheda, and so he kind of posed that question. And so basically, his point is valid, that to run a system or to make a system succeed, one doesn't have to give incentive. What you said is a little different from what he was looking at. Is you create a temporary motivation to transition into the new system. That's good. You give some rewards that they are able to overcome the pain. If you look at the international norms, for somebody to give you performance against 75% beyond on the international standard, there needs to be an incentive. So if you are only on salary and no incentive, generally you'll get a performance of 75% of the global standard. Now when you want people to go beyond that, there should be something. So, but giving incentive is a larger management decision, and that you might not take because you're introducing a technological solution or something of that sort. So it has to be seen in a larger picture, that do we really want to go onto incentive system? How do we design an incentive system that's foolproof? If you're in a multi-factory environment, you have to see at a group level, will you be able to give incentive in a sustainable basis and so on? So from that point of view, yes, it is very important. And there are two issues there. One is a fair pay and incentive.
Sure.
So if the current payments are not fair enough, then maybe you need to increase.
we're running
a little bit.
short of time.
Yeah,
There's
please.
one more question.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the software is, it can be integrated with ERP also, existing software?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it have the pull mechanism of the input data, just like output data is real time?
Yeah.
So input data, can it be auto scheduled, for example, every morning 8 a.m. in the line wise, style wise planning, it can be pulled directly from the,
Yeah, definitely.
It can be done.
Yeah.
okay.
Because
And
it has a rich integration layer with APIs. So we
Okay.
can talk to multiple systems and can pull and push data.
because in
from
our
those
case,
systems.
we are using Excel and uploading it manually. So if someone, someday the guy is not there in the factory and data is not,
Yeah.
so it can be pulled automatically.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely
And
can
can we access the data on the cloud? For example, if I want to do data analysis, data science using say Python, R or Tableau, I want to visualize the integration of the data through say Instagram photo style and the web data, the mail data, the scrapping of all those things, and then use your data also because it is in digitally form available.
Yeah.
If it is available in the cloud. So if I want to access the database also, since I belong to the IT background, so
Yeah.
I want to understand how the data,
So it's a very good question. So as a company, I mean, we are a company, data company, right? We understand the sensitivity around that. So whatever the data we collect on the shop floor is yours, right? So we don't own data, just keep it securely for you. So data is yours. So whenever you need that data, we keep it like, depending on the situation, generally we keep it for about a year. But if you need to keep it more than a year, then obviously there is a cost to it. But you can take it and keep it in your stores, and you can do all your post analytics and things like that with that set of data.
So I think there are just one or two questions. We're running short of time. Can we take that offline? Yes, please.
At the mindscape level, how do you find now you are exposed to Indian entrepreneur culture, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Vietnam. So at the mindset or mindscape level, how do you see the culture or the geographies playing out in terms of, having some role in terms of at the business enterprise level?
Okay, so I think that's a good question. So basically, when we first started off Sri Lanka, now Sri Lanka industry was, you have like maybe 5-6 big ownerships, and they are really big. They are $2 billion, $1 billion, 800 million, these kind of companies. So they do innovations, they do a lot of experiments. So it's easy to get going there, but these are big corporates. I find it sometimes it's difficult to, even though they are forward looking, very difficult, take time to get things rolled out. Bangladesh, they are really open. You can go in and they like to have the technology because they have this mindset that the world is looking at them, that they are not techie and their compliance issues are there, so they want to show off, they really quickly want to buy. So I would say India, in that sense, like the OGTC, at least our engagement was few months and we could manage to convert about 10 factories, which is I don't know whether it's exception because it's with OGTC or whether it's India, but I see it was easier because the size of the factories were also like we could get access to the owners. They make decisions faster. But obviously pricing is a challenge here. Apart from that, they are forward thinking and fast moving, I think, in this concept. Because last year when we came in, we talked about the importance of data and smart factories. Now everyone is talking and they are on the journey. I think there's no more convincing needs to be done. It's just the execution part.
And Vietnam?
Vietnam, they are quite advanced in terms of process and things like that. And the technologically also they are advanced. But the thing is, like for us, engaging them is sometimes challenging. The localization, Vietnam and China. While they use technology, but as a company to go and engage and deploy, there is challenges beyond the business and the technology. It's the localization and things like that. But it's a large market. We are making progress there as well.
Okay, I think we'll call it a day. I would like to thank Imal for a very interesting presentation. Let's give a big hand.